had the pleasure of listening to John Vervaeke and Bernardo Kastrup on the Theory of Everything YouTube channel, and they were really trying to figure out some of the most difficult problems that we as self-conscious, metaconscious human animals are faced with, and they did a remarkable job, I think, disagreeing while still trying to pursue truth together, right? And so they were thinking with each other, sometimes, thinking with each other about the problems in one another's views, but, and even, challenging one another to reconsider a position. But it was really just a model for the type of dialogos, as Vervaeke calls it, that I think we should all aspire to. This is my spot, guys. All these bugs just showed up. So, yeah, metaphysics is the pursuit of insight into, the nature of reality, and it takes a bit of hubris maybe to even think that such a thing were possible. On the other hand, it takes hubris to deny that it's possible as well, and so we're kind of in this double bind as conscious animals. Not just conscious, but meta-conscious, reflective, language-using, artistic, religious, scientific animals. So we find ourselves in a situation, right, that Kant characterized, I think, not inaptly at the beginning of the Critique of Pure Reason, when he said that, human beings are burdened by questions that we cannot help but ask. We ask them by nature, instinctually, and yet we also cannot answer because of the limits of our own cognitive organs. Now, I disagree with Kant that those organs, at least potential organs that we may cultivate in ourselves, we can grow new organs of perception, right, that would allow us to move beyond the limitations that Kant had fixed for us. And, really, if you read Kant closely, you see he was trying to inaugurate a new kind of metaphysics, not deny the possibility of metaphysics. He just wanted to put metaphysics on a scientific basis. And for him, science meant experiment and experience, logically conditioned. And there was a role for imagination in Kant and a role for aesthetics, certainly, but I think they need to play a larger role than they ended up playing in Kant. And that's why I like to think with philosophers like Schelling, who Vervaeke name-dropped once. He dropped Whitehead's name in there once. Those are my touchstones for sort of inheriting intact this Neoplatonic vision that John Vervaeke often wants to draw upon. And it's windy. Hope you can still hear me. and what I love about what John is saying is that he envisions a polarity between emergence and emanation, right? And I think he would say that the sort of formal constraints or the laws of nature emanate from the logical structure of being, whereas the beings themselves, atoms, molecules, stars, galaxies, cells, plants, animals, these beings emerge. But they emerge in the context of these constraints which emanate. And so there's a polarity here, I think, and I also like to think being in a dipolar way, as Whitehead does. And for me, that's where I end up disagreeing with Kastrup and affirming a kind of Whiteheadian pan-experientialism. It's not a constitutive panpsychism, right? It's not that sort of a ground-up view only. Whitehead articulates an ontology of actual occasions of experience, and all the enduring objects we see in our world, all the beings, are societies of these occasions, and God is an actual occasion. The most trivial puff of smoke in far-off empty space is an actual occasion. Certainly God is special, but every creature is special. Every creature is creative. God is a creature of creativity like the rest of us, but God provides those initial constraints, right? The source of the emanation of the laws, the so-called laws of physics, for Whitehead that's the primordial nature of God, and it is the initial condition placed upon creativity that all the rest of us inherit. And in inheriting it, it gives us relevance, right? For Whitehead, the realization of relevance for a being at any level of social organization, from the atom to, or the photon or the electron, up to, the single-celled organism or the multi-cell organism or the human being, the human animal. We are all societies of actual occasions, inheriting God's initial decision, but also inheriting all the subsequent decisions sort of in response to God's call. And Whitehead also has this, it's dipolar, right? This other side of God, not the emanationist side, but the emergent side, the part of God that's growing together with us, the consequent nature of God. And if you want, the primordial nature is eros, right? More like desire, yearning. The consequent nature of God is agape, right? It embraces all, remembers everything. And so, I think Bernardo wants there to be only mind, ultimately, and Whitehead's view, no, there's a physical aspect and a mental aspect. It's not a dual aspect monism exactly, though, because that has a neutrality to it, right? It's called neutral monism sometimes, and Whitehead's vision is telic and vectored. It's not the sort of teleology by design that we're used to in European philosophy. It's an immanent purpose. It's in Whitehead's cosmos. There's not just one telos, right? There are multiple teloi, and every creature has its own desires, and we all resonate with one another because we're open to one another. Cognition is extended just as life and coevolution is environmentally and socially extended, right? If it happens at all, it happens because beings grow together. There is no other kind of happening other than growing together. And so even God grows together with the world in Whitehead's scheme. And I think somehow the tension of that polarity is lost in Bernardo's thing, or at least the only individuality that arises in his universe is due to some dissociation, some trauma in the field, a knot that is ultimately illusory. And I think maybe there's a deeper side. I mean, Kastrup, I don't want to say that he's claiming it's all just Maya, maybe on some level, but he's also saying, I think, that through myth and symbol, we can see the world around us as indicating or pointing to this ground, this ideal ground, this divine field. So I don't want to, mischaracterize Bernardo, but I also think that, John Vervaeke and I might ultimately differ because he seemed to want to, he's got this emanationist side, right? So it's not just emergence, but he didn't want to affirm any kind of panpsychism, at least, and I would wonder how far he'd be willing to go with Whitehead on the pan-experientialism thing, which I guess isn't pushing soul, that sort of high-grade mentality, self-conscious sort of experience. experience all the way down, but rather just a more non-conscious form of experience, more like emotion, blind emotion even, than any sort of self-reflective, intentional consciousness. Prehension is his word for, right, the sort of feeling, very basic feeling that goes all the way down. But prehensions can also grow more complex into propositional, logical judgments in the form of our own human consciousness. Those judgments that we make, logical, scientific judgments, are, for Whitehead, they're ultimately contrasts between feelings of feelings, and feelings of feelings of feelings. And, it's a hierarchy of feeling by which we construct knowledge of nature, just as it is a hierarchy of feeling by which hydrogen atoms follow the gravitational gradient to form a star, right? So, I guess I just wanted to lay down my own path in walking through these ideas, and just express my gratitude to Bernardo and John for, and the host of the Theory of Everything podcast. Sorry, I'm forgetting your name at the moment. Go check it out. It's well worth your 3.5 or 4 hours. I listened to it over a few days, so then I really soaked it in, and it's valuable. And they may disagree with each other about ontology, but I think they did both share a sense of the importance of responding to the meaning crisis that is caused by whatever we want to call it, nihilism, materialism, the sense that the human is an accident in the universe, that we don't really belong here, and that death is just the end. That is a problem, and it's, driving us mad, and I think we need a better story as conscious language using artistic, scientific, religious animals. We've lost our story, or we're between stories, as Thomas Berry used to say. And I think John Vervaeke and Bernardo Kastrup are both trying to restory our situation, to move us beyond nihilism and to affirm something positive and not just negate what we can no longer believe, about the universe and our place within it. Clearly we need to grow out of the forms of orientation we may have had before in light of modern scientific investigation and modern artistic practice and modern spiritual experience. We can't just go back to some imagined ideal as if like Proclus or Plato or whoever had it figured out, and we just need to remember. There's some of that, but there's also something new that has occurred, and it's calling us to a higher form of responsibility and a deeper freedom. And so we need to freely, realize this connection to the universe that maybe once came instinctually, but can be it can be that way no longer. So, just some thoughts. Share yours. I'd love to hear what you think.